This podcast is made possible through donations from listeners like you and our partners at Tallman Equipment. Have you shopped the clearance section on the Tallman Equipment website? When the folks at Tallman need to make room on their warehouse shelves, that means big savings for you guys, from power tools to dynamometers and much more. Check Tallman Equipment's clearance page on their website at www.tallmanequipment.com, shop clearance, and save some big bucks today. Goalie Ashwa Gummies. You can find them at goalie.com. These gummies are a holistic, non-habit forming approach to help you relax, restore, and unwind. They are made with ashwagandha, which is classified as an adaptogen. These adaptogens are a select group of plants that help your body cope with stress. Studies have shown that KSM 66 ashwagandha reduces levels of cortisol, the stress hormone. Use our promo code THESHOWUPDAD Foundation to get 10% off your order. And last but not least, Zenderance. Their products are designed to maximize your health. At Zenderance, they strive to support and have a positive impact on the wellness of every hardworking dad out there. They use proven, clean, and accessible products to make an impact on your health and performance. Use my code THESHOWUPDAD and get 10% off your next purchase. For more info, go to www.zenderance.com. That is spelled XENDURANCE.com. Thank you. Welcome to the Show Up Dad podcast. This podcast is created for hardworking fathers. At the Show Up Dad, we recognize that fathers providing for their children is certainly important. But when men truly understand their unique role and gain the knowledge and skills to be great fathers, they can transform and impact the future generation. Today's guest is Journeyman Lineman Johnny Garcia. Johnny served our country 4 years in the Marine Corps. He has been in the trade going on 18 years and now currently works for a municipality. He has been blessed with twin daughters that are going to be 12 this coming December. Welcome to the show, brother.
Hey, man. Thanks a lot, brother. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely, Johnny. Well, like I always want to do, bro, I always ask our guests to tell us a little bit about their situation growing up and what their father was like, what they could remember, if you don't mind.
Well, I grew up with a stepfather. My biological father, he was never really in the picture. For whatever reason, I knew him. I knew of him. I had contact with that side of the family, but he just wasn't around. Mm-hmm. So at the time, I was raised by my mother's boyfriend, who eventually became her husband years later. Mm-hmm. But it's kind of, I was lucky to have him, mm-hmm. And he's the person that taught me responsibility. Discipline. He kind of whipped me into shape at a really young age. Mm-hmm. And I'm grateful for it, but he was rough. He was rough on me.
Mm-hmm. What do you mean by rough? Like,
I think it was around 6. Mm-hmm. I think that's when he came in the picture. And at the time, I guess I was just running wild little kid. Mm-hmm. And he wasn't that much older than me. I think me and my mom are 16 years apart. I think he was 14 years older than me at the time. He was 19. And so, I was kind of part of the package, with my mother.
Yeah.
So, I guess, I was running wild and he seen what he had to do, Mm-hmm. I just had chores at a really young age, before school, after school. Anything I did, I caught hell for it.
Yeah. No, for sure. I look back, I'm around the same age as you, and it was different. I had chores at the age of 6, and I remember part of those chores were making sure my mom had kindling, or palitos, as we call them, and to start the fire. Wow. And she had to have those every day, dude, because that's how we heated our house, Wow. And if I didn't do that, and guess what? Like you, I caught hell too.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I think it was the time frame, the way those guys were raised, or, I don't know. It's just different from today is what I'm getting at. but it's good to see that he did teach you discipline and responsibility, and that you're able to recognize him for that. I do got to say, Johnny, I got to give my hats off to that guy. I mean, 19 years old and taking on a responsibility. I mean, dude, that's a hell of a deal, bro. It really
Oh
is.
yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, he was a real man,
Mm-hmm.
for real, you know, and we have a really good relationship now, but it
Mm-hmm.
was hard, man. It was hard till I got in my teens. You
Mm-hmm.
know, it, I really didn't have that, you know, that that father that we would play catch, or we had talks. It was never that.
Yeah.
It was always you know, it was always discipline, man.
Mm,
And but he was still there.
yeah.
He was still there. I know a lot of people didn't grow up with a father. They didn't have any of that.
Mm-hmm.
At least I had somebody.
Yeah, exactly. No, and we talk over and over again about this, the positive effect of a father just being present, not even being a good dad, but it is so important just for the presence of a dad to be there, that the kids actually graduate school, they stay out of prison, they don't get pregnant at an early age and stuff like that. I mean, it just goes up and up and up, all the positive effects of just having a dad there. You know
Oh
what I
yeah,
mean? Not even being a good dad, just being present. It's crazy, dude.
yeah,
Um,
I get that.
I
Yeah,
think that has a lot to do with the structure that they provide. We look at it as discipline and all that stuff, but I think what they do is they provide structure. I had a past guest on here talk about how boys and girls are different, right? And you can't raise up a little girl the same way as you do a son. Um, for sons, we have to give them structure in order to have relationship with them. They need to be told, hey, you got this, you got to clean up your room, whatever. You know what I mean? Now, yeah, include the love and everything else like that, right? And the positive reinforcements. But boys thrive on that structured atmosphere. Whereas if you do the same thing with your daughter, like I did, right? Um,
mm,
it just drives them further and further away. Girls need relationship before they can handle the structure. And I had to learn that the hard way. Thank God it's helping me out now that my daughter's, she's 16 now. And it took me a long time to do that because she didn't trust me. You know what I mean? She grew up where she thought everything was just so critical that, I mean, she even came to the point where we had a podcast on. She said that she thought I hated her just because I was
well,
so rigid and unflexible. You know what I mean?
yeah. I mean, I totally get that. Because
Mm-hmm.
like I said, I was raised a certain way. I only knew one thing.
Yeah.
I only knew one thing. So when I had twins and they were both girls, you
Mm-hmm.
know, it it, it kind of I was kind of, well, I can't do the same thing that was done to me. I really can't. And
Mm-hmm.
I kind of just had to. I mean, like any other parent, you're just kind of flying by the seat of your pants. And I mean, they're still young,
Yeah.
but like I just had to discipline one of my daughters this weekend,
Mm-hmm.
for she's just at the age where she just wants to talk, mess around at school. She ain't the work that she does do. It's kind of
Mm-hmm.
like whatever, just turns it in. And her mom's having a hard time with it and telling me, you need to do something about it. And I kind of laid the hammer down on her, told her this can't
Mm-hmm.
happen. This is going to happen if you keep doing this. But at the same time, I can't. Like you said, she's not a little boy. It's a little different.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. It's just crazy. I mean, and I understand it. I understand the reason why we have to treat them different. I learned in my relationship with my daughter how to be a better husband with my wife, because the same issues I dealt with my daughter were the same things I was doing with my wife. So then in turn, I was like, okay, something's wrong with me. Let me hold the pool for a second. Okay, why do I treat my women or my daughters and my wife a certain way, very harsh, very critical, and I started having to think back and do the work and be like, okay, what did I see growing up? My father did the same thing. He was very critical with the women. with my wife, or not my wife, with my mom, with my sisters, which were twins too. They're 7 years older than me. And he was just very harsh, and just very critical with his words and everything. And I grew up doing the same thing because that's what I saw, is what I'm trying to get at. You know what I mean?
Wow. Yeah, it's crazy you say that, because as you're talking, I'm looking at how I treat my own relationship. And now that you say that, it makes a lot of sense. It's probably
There's
it's probably part of my problem too, and I don't even know it.
Well, you know what I mean? Like you said earlier, dude, I mean, you didn't know, you fell back on doing certain things. And it's like, you're absolutely right, bro. We didn't get a blueprint as fathers, and we tend to fall back to what was taught us, right?
Yeah,
And it's up to us to break that stigma, break that mold, change that culture in our family so they don't go through the same thing. You know what I mean? But it takes men like you and I to do that, right?
yeah, yeah. I mean, I pay attention to everything you're doing, and
Mm-hmm.
it's a trip. I mean, something can happen, and for some reason that day you'll post something, it'll relate to what I just went through. It's it's
Mm-hmm.
amazing, I mean,
Mm-hmm.
for people out there that are listening, it goes a long way,
Mm-hmm.
it really does.
Yeah, no, for sure. And that's what we're trying to do. We're just trying to raise that awareness, you know what I mean? Because it is possible to be a better father, better husband, better dad, better worker. You know what I mean? Just it when you change all that inside of you, you're just a healthier being, right? And that
Yeah,
can be, it can start affecting like a snowball effect all the way down in every relationship that you have and everything. And that's what we're trying to do, bring that hope back. I think a lot of men have lost hope. They've given up, right? Especially the
yeah,
way the court system is and how it's one-sided and everything like this. I deal with family courts and everything. And I hear all these horrible stories, of how they've been demonized. And I'm not saying some of these guys, they probably did some bad stuff and whatever. You know what I mean? You got to
yeah,
kind of look at it through a filtered lens. But at the same token, I mean, just like there's bad guys, there's bad women out there as well.
yeah.
You
That's
know?
so true, dude. I know all about it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's part of life now.
Mm-hmm.
Dealing with that stuff. But you're right.
Mm-hmm.
I
Now,
mean, you just can't give up.
no, you can't. Exactly. You can't give up, and you just got to keep doing what you're doing, one step in front of the other, just like in the Marine Corps, right? You never quit, always faithful, just keep moving forward, right?
Exactly. Yeah, that's probably the biggest struggle. Is not
Mm-hmm.
giving up. And I mean, for me, it is. No matter what I'm going through or how I'm feeling about this situation or that situation, I still got to be there for my kids. You know,
Mm-hmm.
and and as hard as it is sometimes, like I don't like for them to see that. And
Mm-hmm.
and sometimes I fail. Sometimes my emotions get the best of me. It's like I fall down, and the next day I got to get back up. I got to keep trying. I got to keep going.
Mm-hmm.
It's a
No,
struggle.
it definitely is, but the good thing is you keep getting back up. Um, I had a guest on here, Dr. Stephen Poulter, super knowledgeable guy out of LA. And he said that a bad moment isn't a bad life. And fathers, when you fail, just like they told us when we were kids, knock the dust off of it, get back up and keep going forward.
Yeah,
Be consistent, be constant,
absolutely.
you know. I wanted to ask you, Johnny, about your stepdad and your mother's interaction with each other. And the reason why I always ask this question, brother, is because I feel that it's very important. And us as children, when we're children, we base a lot of our relationships and even the people that we look for in a relationship off of our parents and what we remember. So how is that dynamic between your stepfather and your mother and the way they interacted and stuff like that? Do you remember?
Well, thinking back, you
Mm-hmm.
know, and and taking in account how young they were,
Mm-hmm.
you know, they made a lot of mistakes.
Yeah.
I mean, they were always good parents. I always had a place to live and food to eat and clothes on my back. They
Mm-hmm.
they were good parents, but there was fights, arguments, a lot of drinking, a lot of problems, but
Hmm.
like any other household. But at the time, after a while, you just think it's normal,
Yeah.
there was never no abuse or nothing like that, but there was some heated arguments, yelling, throwing stuff,
Hmm.
things that happen in a marriage, especially a young couple.
Hmm.
But they made their mistakes, but they were always there. They're always present, you know.
Hmm. Man, it's crazy well you said that because you're absolutely right. When that becomes part of the norm, you think it's normal. And when you're talking about that, I remembered something my wife told me. She came to visit me before we're just dating or whatever, right? And we're sitting around the table and I wanted her to meet my family. And in my family, we're very vocal. We didn't believe in internalizing everything. If we had something on our friggin' mind or whatever, we're going to tell you right there, right at the table. And there was cussing and yelling and this and that. And my wife didn't grow up that way, right? So she freaked out, dude. She's like, holy crap, dude, you guys are super dysfunctional. Like, she thought me and my brother were going to throw down across the table. And I'm like, no, man, we're cool. Next thing you
Oh
know,
yeah,
we're outside on the porch hugging each other or whatever. You know what I mean?
yeah,
And so she didn't grow up like that, and I started thinking about, I'm like, man, is that wrong? Is that, and I started looking at it from her perspective and stuff. I was like, man, I just comfortable that way with that, so it's crazy to see what we start seeing as comfortable when we get used to it, if that makes
yeah.
sense.
Oh yeah. I knew kids
Hmm.
probably in junior high. I mean, this guy. I mean, him and his mom were living at a motel. I mean, that's
Hmm.
where they lived. They'd hop around for different motels. That's how they lived. And for him, I don't know what was going through his head, but he might
Hmm.
have thought that was normal, or he might have known. I don't know, but that's how they live their life. And I would see stuff like that,
Hmm.
and you know, being young, I would still feel bad for him,
Yeah.
and think, well, I got it pretty good, even though there was the dysfunctional stuff going on and the
Hmm.
arguing and the drunken madness, you know, it really wasn't that bad to me. But when you say that, what's something to somebody is completely something different to somebody else.
Hmm.
I mean, that makes total sense. You don't
Yeah.
know that until you talk to somebody or they see it for themselves. You don't know what they're thinking.
Hmm. um my brother-in-law, right, his dad was a Vietnam vet and whatever, and he got divorced and whatnot. And when he was in eighth grade, he had his own apartment, had his own T-Bird and everything, and that's how he grew up. He had an apartment right next to the high school,
Wow.
and he would party and everything. And he was the cool kid. He's the kid everybody wanted to go to his house. You know what I mean? For parties during lunch and stuff like that. But that was normal to him, and him just telling me the stories and stuff like that, I'm like, man, I didn't, that's crazy. You know what I mean? I can't even imagine being that age and having my own apartment. But when you're that age, you're thinking, oh, that's like the coolest thing, right?
Yeah. Yeah. That's nuts. I've never
That's
even heard of
nuts. Yeah, it
that.
is absolutely crazy. And I'm like, and I started talking to him, and we're discussing it. It's like his dad, the woman he was with didn't get along with him. So instead of breaking up with the woman and choosing, hey, if you don't like my son comes first. He's my blood. You're not, right?
Yeah.
He chose to make her and appease her, and appease what she had, and say, okay,
Wow.
here, son, you can stay here, and me pay you off with gifts and money and stuff like that. You know what I mean? And I see a lot of that. I have another friend who his dad would visit him once a month. He was a over the interstate truck driver, right? And he would come once a month. He would bring him a fifth of whiskey, and he'd give him groceries, and he'd take off, and
Wow.
he'd see him every month. Yeah, and he was a young man. He's a lineman too, and he was talking about that on one of our episodes. And when he told me that, I was blown away. He's like, man, what kind of lifestyle is that? You know what I'm saying? But everybody has to go through the things, and everybody has a different story that they
And
have, right?
because I think that's what was going on, with my biological father. he
Mm-hmm.
was starting a new family, and I mean, I got brothers and sisters on that side of the family,
Mm-hmm.
but I think she was influencing him to stay away from me, from what I understand.
Yeah.
Hearing this and that growing up, and so that's what I always thought was
Mm-hmm.
going on. Why he was never around. And
Yeah.
I always remember as a kid thinking like I would never do that. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
as a little kid, I was thinking if I ever have kids, I would never let someone dictate whether I could see them or not. Like I knew
Mm-hmm.
that much as a kid, and and then becoming an adult and finally having kids,
Mm-hmm.
you know, that never really happened to me, but I would
Mm-hmm.
never let it. You understand?
Yeah.
Like it's just one of those things that can't happen. That if that's what's going on, that has to go. You know, I
Mm-hmm.
mean, any real father, I mean, would feel that way in my mind.
Absolutely. No, I agree with you 100%. And it's up to us. We talked about that earlier about um, being that gatekeeper and changing it for our families. And that's exactly what you did for yours. My dad didn't drink in my family, right? But my grandpa did. And he was the one who was really influential on me. And he was an alcoholic. He was a nice alcoholic, but he was an alcoholic, right?
Yeah.
And I started going down that path too, being in the military and stuff like that. And I finally had to stop it myself. And it took my wife bringing to my attention something. And I'm going to share that with you. I always tell people this because they always ask me, how long has it been? You don't drink and stuff like that. And I tell them, no, it's been, 15 years since I've drank. And what it was is I was drinking a lot. I was working out of state and I'd come home and I was jamming out all kinds of Maker's Mark shooters. I'd drink like 4 shooters on the way home. I was 4 hours away, and I'd drink a 6-pack of Shinerbach, right? And I'd get home, and my wife always had a 6-pack of Shinerbach in the refrigerator. Okay. So instead of her smelling me and meeting me at the front door, I'd go through the back, and I'd come in, I'd pop a top real quick, and I'd jam one of them shiners down, right? Just so she wouldn't smell. But she wasn't dumb, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Um, and then I'd be over there flipping burgers on the gazebo, you know what I mean? And we had 15 acres behind my house because we lived in a rural area. And I'd be throwing all my miniatures over there, right? And some guy who had bought in those fields and he was going to farm them out decided to come and clean them up, right? And he brought 2 5-gallon buckets of miniatures filled, all Maker's Mark. And he put them right at the fence line while I was out there flipping burgers. And it just so happened to be that my wife was bringing the burgers to me, right? She
Wow.
sees that, looks at me, and gives me the look, right? She gave me that look that only a scorned wife can give. And I was like, oh, crap. So I go and I tell her, I'm like, oh, so what's up? And she's like, look, David, I'm not going to tell you what to do. So, but if you are okay with your daughter, I only had one daughter at the time. She's like, if you are okay with your daughter, Dakota, growing up and being comfortable with that smell, and she grows up and picks a man based off of the comfortability of that smell. She goes like that. She's like, are you going to be okay with it? And I have to think about that, dude. And that broke me, dude. And I never had a drink since.
Wow.
Yeah.
I've never heard of that. Like I never thought of that. You know,
Mm-hmm.
I've never thought of that. I mean, like I got my vices.
Mm-hmm.
I for some reason I just can't stop smoking. I smoke cigarettes,
Mm-hmm.
and that always crosses my mind,
Mm-hmm.
and it kind of scares me. And my
Yeah.
kids got to the age where they give me the look like, are you really going to smoke that? Are you really going to do that? And
Mm-hmm.
they get it from their grandmother. Their grandmother quit smoking, and she tells them this and that and how bad it is for you. So my kids are on me about it, and I've tried and I've tried, and it's so hard for me to quit, but it makes a lot of sense what you're saying.
Mm-hmm. No,
It's
for
just
sure. Mm-hmm. Go
it,
ahead,
it's
sorry.
just one of those things, man. It's just another obstacle.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a tough one.
Oh yeah, for sure. And don't beat yourself up about it, Johnny. When you're ready, you're ready. Like me. I would even convince I'm one of those guys who can convince myself hell is great. Okay.
Yeah, I understand that.
you know how it is. I mean, in the military, you're in the suck, you have to embrace the suck. And sometimes you got to convince yourself and change your mindset. You know what I
No,
mean?
I totally understand that.
So I convinced myself that, hey, this is totally okay. I even, because my wife, she was going to church and stuff, and I would even tell her, well, Jesus' first miracle was changing water into wine, and all this other stuff. And it took her telling me what she told me for me to stop. And then eventually I got off chewing tobacco too. I had chewed tobacco since I was like 13 years old. And I eventually stopped that like two to 3 years later as well. So, that was another ordeal too. That was another whole nother realization that I had there. I'll share that with you real quick. I had a bad dream, right, about my daughter, and I saw in my dream, I saw my daughter walking down the aisle. Okay. And I wasn't there. I wasn't walking her down that aisle. And in the very next moment, I saw myself walking her down the aisle, and it was like two different paths. And I heard in my head, dude, while I'm sleeping, I heard in my head, you choose. And immediately I knew what I needed to do. I knew that that's what that dream meant, was I had to choose. Either I was going to be there for my daughter to walk her down the aisle, or I was going to continue chewing and not be there. The choice is up to you. And dude, I stopped that one too. And I was like, oh, you know what I mean?
Wow.
But yeah, it was pretty deep, man. And I'm not telling you that to shame you or nothing like that. You know what I mean? That's what it took for me to stop my vice. You know what I'm saying? And
no, I hear you.
Don't get me wrong, man. I picked up other vices now. I arm wrestle. So you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
that's what I do now. Before that, I was doing all these adventure races and running and stuff like that with my wife. But you start getting older, your knees can't really take as much. So
Yeah.
that all changed. But hopefully one day you'll, be able to stop.
Yeah. It's definitely on my mind. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
you know, I mean, I don't drink that much anymore,
Mm-hmm.
but sometimes I do, and
Yeah.
they see everything you do, and it's like you're always in the spotlight,
Mm-hmm.
and sometimes, I forget that. I think a lot of us do,
Yeah.
but it's like I don't know, it's so important, and like I said, those things are always on my mind,
Mm-hmm.
and it hasn't been enough to make me completely quit. It's like I don't want to lie to myself, like you said, like when you're ready, you're ready, but sometimes
Mm-hmm.
I go weeks without anything, without a drink, but I can't give up the cigarettes. You know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
just it's horrible. I try.
Yeah. And just keep trying, like we talk about, you know what I mean? Now you told me about your background and your father, young mother, and all that stuff, right, Johnny?
Yeah.
With that being said, did you want to be a father? Because I know I've talked to other men, and they had like a crazy childhood, right? To where they didn't even want to have kids. And then they became a father, and they're like amazing fathers,
Yeah.
and it was one of those things where they're like, I never even wanted to be a father. You know what I mean? Did you want to be a father growing up, going through the stuff you went through and stuff like that?
You
Or
know what? Honestly,
mm-hmm.
I never thought about it for a long time. Well,
Okay.
probably till I was about my 20s.
Mm-hmm.
And at that time, I was like, you know, I don't, I really didn't know. I was like, maybe not, maybe it's not for me.
Yeah.
And at that time, a lot of my friends in their 20s, they were having kids, they were having kids early,
Mm-hmm.
and I'd see what they were doing. I mean, I'd see how it was changing them, and they were
Mm-hmm.
still young and wild, but it did change them, priorities were different, and
Mm-hmm.
they end up being they're all good fathers, at that young age. And I mean, they still are, but like most parents, you think when I'm ready,
Mm-hmm.
I'll do it. And when I'm a little more financially stable, or when I have a house, when I'm married, I went through all that.
Yeah.
And I mean, I started thinking about it late in life. I mean, I was 38 when I had my kids,
Mm-hmm.
so I felt at the time, I'm married, just bought a house. I just topped out. I was like about 38, 37, 38. And I
Mm-hmm.
thought, I'm ready. I always wanted to. I think it was just timing. And I think every parent thinks about that. I think everyone that is going to have kids tries to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And so finally I did. And I thought I was doing it right. And I thought it was time. And, you know, things just don't turn out the way you think they are.
Mm-hmm.
But once I had them, I mean, it did change me.
Mm-hmm.
It totally changed my life. And just the way, I used to run pretty wild, and I slowed down. And
Mm-hmm.
even when I was married, I was still kind of wild, just
Mm-hmm.
partying, drinking. But when I had the kids, it was different. And once I held them, once they came out and I had them both in my arms, it was just a feeling that you never have that until you do it.
Yeah.
And so it just took me a while. I
Mm-hmm.
wish I had them when I was younger, but it took me a while to have that urge to tell myself, I want to have kids. I want to be a dad someday. It took
Yeah.
me a long time.
No, and it's cool too because you did wait, right? And when you're ready, and you reached a certain maturity, right? At that point, my wife and I, when we had our baby or my daughter, right? My wife was only 21 years old. I'm a cradle robber, dude. I'm 6 years older than her, right? So, so I had already experienced all kinds of stuff. I had been around the world, no muff too tough, no sky too high, no bar too far, no sea too deep. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And been around. I was in the military and stuff like that. And I came back and I was ready to settle down. Well, here is this young girl who just barely, I met her when she was 19 and, I dated her until she was 21. And at 21, we got married. And 6 months later, she was pregnant, dude. And our
Wow.
plans were to travel around and go because I love traveling. I did a lot of rock climbing and
Uh,
adventure racing and stuff like that. And that's what she really loved to do. And we got pregnant and that kind of just stopped, bro. I went into this super vigilant mode of being a father and protective and trying to provide and do all these different things. And, I bought a house because I thought that's what you do when you
mhm.
have kids and get married. You buy a house, and get stability and all this stuff. And eventually that house became like a trap because I never wanted to leave there. And then I was in the line trade, right? And I had to travel because I was on the outside. I was a construction hand. So I started having to travel. And guess what? This beautiful woman who I married and I wanted to share my life with and everything now became my side chick because she's at home taking care of my daughter. I'm not even there helping her raise the daughter,
Wow.
and I'm all over the damn place. And then justifying it saying, hey, you should be lucky that you're home. You should be lucky that you don't have to work. I provide, this job's providing a great life for us. But it
Yeah.
wasn't really a life. And I didn't really see that until she told me. She's like, I don't care about the money. I don't care about the house. All I want is my husband. I want to grow in life together with you.
Wow. And she's so young. She didn't get a chance to get out there for a few years and go
No,
run amok and have fun. And she's straight to being a mother, huh?
straight to being a mother, dude. And then uh, we went, let's see, that was one of the reasons why I hired onto the utilities because I was like, all right, it's enough being on the road. I'm going to be home and then you're going to get your shot. You're going to get to go to school. Right.
Yeah.
And that never came around either. And it sucked. You know what I mean? And, I caused all kinds of unnecessary trauma to her. And that's stuff that I got to deal with. And, even the trauma with my daughter, just being really super, because when you're stressed like that and you're in a relationship and there's tension in your marriage like that, and you don't realize that the tension is supposed to grow you guys stronger, but you see tension as pulling apart and you start pointing at each other and blaming each other and stuff like that. The kid sees that. And my daughter was seeing that. she was seeing that me and mama were fighting, weren't getting along. And then I couldn't do anything from a couple states away. I thought the only easy thing to do was make her happy by, let's get her a nice house or a nice car or nice this or nice that, just supplicating my absence with things.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of men do that, and it's like, man, they don't want that. They want you, they want your attention. That's it. You know what I mean? But
Absolutely.
I had to learn the hard way is what I'm getting at,
Absolutely. I was only married for 3 years,
Mm-hmm.
and that's exactly what I was doing. I was providing, and I'd be at
Mm-hmm.
work. I wasn't even one of those guys that was at work every day, every
Mm-hmm.
weekend. I made enough to be comfortable, to pay the bills. Now she's staying home. She has the kids. She ain't working. That's another, maybe 40 grand a year that I gotta make up for.
Mm-hmm.
So I was doing that, and I thought I was doing the right thing, and you know, I think she might have had a little bit of a postpartum depression,
Yeah.
and
Mm-hmm.
she was like, acting out on me, and I'm thinking, all I do is go to work and come home, and want to be
Mm-hmm.
with my kids. I thought I was doing the right thing, like you said,
Mm-hmm.
and apparently that I wasn't doing it right.
Yeah.
It caused problems, and so much that the marriage didn't last. And she ended
Mm-hmm.
up finding out later, that there were some hormonal things going on with her, and but
Mm-hmm.
it that plus the working, it ruined our marriage,
Mm-hmm.
and it just is what it is now, and we're dealing with it now.
Yeah. And that's unfortunate, Johnny. It really is, because there's a lot of guys that have gone through the same thing. A lot of guys that have gone through
Oh,
the
yeah,
same thing. And like you said, we think we're doing the right thing,
exactly. That's what
you
we
know?
think.
And it's like, man, we really need to, I think, my advice for guys out there, and we do a whole marriage podcast and everything that with both me and my wife. But one of the things I always try to tell men out there is, dude, listen to your wife, learn to listen,
Yeah, yeah,
and not what we think it is, but what they're actually saying. And we don't got to solve all their problems. I know for us, it's hard because as men, what do we want to do? Well, I can do this, and I'm going to solve it. And that way you can just shut up. Right.
oh,
I
yeah,
know that's
oh,
how
yeah,
I was.
yeah. No, you're
And
right.
that's not what they want. Sometimes they just want to vent and get it off, get the snakes out of their head. Right.
Yeah,
I had my wife tell me one time, she's like, you can come home and you can vent, and I'll let you vent, and you'll talk about the guys or whatever's going on at work. And I'll let you talk. So, but when I do that, you can't handle that. You get upset when I start venting and complaining. And I don't know what it was, Johnny. I really don't, man. It was almost like I couldn't handle her telling me what was going on in her world. It made me uncomfortable.
wow.
And I finally realized what it was is I couldn't solve it. So that's why I got uncomfortable with it. Because I wanted, I saw her in pain. I saw her dealing with all kinds of issues and stuff. And I wanted to help her because I love her. But I didn't have answers for her.
Yeah,
And that's what made me uncomfortable.
yeah. I guess as men, we're like natural problem solvers. I guess I mean,
Yeah.
because we all think that way,
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of times we're completely wrong, and even in my relationship now,
Mm-hmm.
I need to step back and remember what you just said. I'm always, I guess I've always been a work in progress. I'm
Yeah.
always, I'm always putting my foot in my mouth and then regretting it and then listening
Mm-hmm.
and why didn't I hear that before? I do that a lot, and but when you say that, it just it's something that I guess I need to hear. It brings it to light. I gotta
Mm-hmm.
think back. What have I done? What am I doing? It makes a lot of sense.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard to do though, but it has to be done.
Mm-hmm. Oh, for sure. We got to definitely make that change. With that being said, we're talking about change and all that stuff, brother. What kind of advice do you have for a young family dad, being that, you had a stepfather and your mother were very young and stuff like that, and you saw the stuff, the tensions and everything. What advice would you have for a young family dad today?
Um, you know, something like that. I always think back how I grew up, and like I told you, it was real strict,
Mm-hmm.
and which is needed, I mean, if I didn't have that, I honestly don't know where I'd be today. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, for real, I don't know where I'd be if I didn't have that in my life.
Mm-hmm.
So not only do you show your child that you love them, you know,
Mm-hmm.
there's got to be a fine line in between love and showing them responsibility, and they're accountable for their actions. And I mean,
Mm-hmm.
you could love a child to death and you know end up spoiling them like crazy,
Mm-hmm.
and anything would ever happen to you, or they get out in the real world and they're not gonna know how to function. It's
Yeah.
like a fine line. I mean, I wish I had that when I was young, because I know a lot of my friends do. My brothers had that. I just never did, and
Mm-hmm.
that's what I try to do with my kids.
Mm-hmm.
And 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 also, like we talked about, is no matter what happens, just don't ever give up. You know, it's
Mm-hmm.
it's your job until you die. It's you have to be there no matter what. No matter what happens in the marriage, things happen that people can't foresee. They'd
Yeah.
never dream of it in a million years, and here it is. Things are harder on you now, and you
Mm-hmm.
just can't give in.
Mm.
I mean,
I
that's
like it.
that's how I see it for someone young. And I mean, I talk to guys at work that are 21 years old, 22 years old, and they're married, and they have
Mm-hmm.
a kid. They have one on the way. That's the first thing I say is like, don't spoil them, man. You know, there's got to
Mm-hmm.
be a balance.
Yeah, for sure. You can't be lopsided on that at all. It's almost like too much of something just really just ruins everything, right?
Yeah, too much of
Um,
one thing, and it can't be good.
mm-mm.
And another thing is, like I try to tell myself, is they're always watching.
Mm-hmm.
You get to a certain age, they're always watching, and
Yeah.
that's one thing I got to tell myself constantly. Like I said, I mess up all the time,
Mm-hmm.
and I beat myself up about it, you know, and but like I gotta get back up, and I gotta try again. I gotta learn
Mm-hmm.
from my mistakes and just keep going, you know.
Being a father to two twin girls, right? Are you okay with your daughter marrying somebody like you? And that was a crazy question that I got asked. And that's where I started making the changes, and I want to ask you that, brother. Would you be okay with your daughters marrying somebody like yourself? You know what I mean?
Um, that's a really good question,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and that really puts a spotlight on me. But
Sorry, bro.
you know, because that's a really good question, and
Yeah.
be honest with you, no one's ever asked me that. So,
Mm-hmm.
but you know, in some ways, I would say yes,
Mm-hmm.
and then in some ways, I would say no.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think I have good qualities. I think there's a lot of good things about me. The way
Absolutely.
I, the way I handle my family, and then I look at myself and like I got a lot of improving to do, even at
Mm-hmm.
my age. So probably yes and no. If I want to be honest, I'd
Mm-hmm.
probably say no.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I could always do better. I should have always done better.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a real hard question. But
Yeah.
down to morally to my core, I would say yes.
Mm-hmm.
But like I said, there's things about me that ain't perfect,
Mm-hmm.
and I probably wouldn't want them with someone like me.
Yeah.
But
And that's the crazy part, Johnny, because I gotta agree with you too. I wouldn't want my daughter in the condition I am now. Honestly, I know I'm not like I used to be, thank God, but I know I'm going to be changing. You know what I mean? I wouldn't
yeah,
want my daughter, and me being honest, like you, I wouldn't my daughter marrying a guy like me. Not right now, because we're not perfect, like you said, dude. And I struggle with a lot of stuff too. I'm still struggling, and I'm being honest, you know what I mean? I'm the show up dad and everything like that. But at the same time, I'm being real, man. I struggle with a lot of stuff. I'm learning every day how to be
yeah,
a better father,
absolutely.
how to be a better husband, right?
Yeah, absolutely, dude. I mean, like you took the words out of my mouth. That's exactly
Mm-hmm.
how I feel. You don't think you're a bad person till you think about your child,
Yeah.
ended up with someone like you, and it's like, wow.
Mm-hmm.
I've never really thought of that, and I'm sure people have. I just
Mm-hmm.
haven't. I'm over here struggling, trying and doing my best, and
Yeah.
it's like, I don't have it all figured out. I'd
No.
want them to be with someone a little more stable, someone that gets it more.
Mm-hmm.
But
And I'd be leery about the guy who thinks he's figured it all out.
yeah,
Being a
that's
dad,
true.
to be honest, you
No,
know what I
that's
mean?
that's
Like,
very
what's
that's
this
true.
guy
But
got
then
up his sleeve,
but
homie?
then
You know what I mean?
and then you think about it though. I mean, no one's ever good enough for your child. No one's ever
No.
going to be good enough for your daughter. So that's, like I said, man. That's a tough question. But
Mm-hmm.
it's a real question, man. That's real.
Yeah, I know. I was thinking about that. I'm like, man, gosh, would I want my daughter to marry me? And I'm like, if I'm honest, no, I wouldn't. You know what I mean? And it just means that we're humble enough, brother, to admit that we have faults and we're going to get better.
Yeah,
Right.
that's for sure.
And it takes that humility, dude. I'd rather have somebody that's humble enough to be able to be like, dude, I ain't perfect. I make mistakes and I'm going to do something about it. To me, that's a man,
Yeah.
you know?
True.
Now, what is your legacy to be as a dad? Like, what do you want your legacy to be? What do you want to be known for? And before I finish this question, I had a past guest, right, say, what are your kids going to say about you at your funeral? Are they going to say, hey, dad was a good provider, but he was never around? You know what I mean? Or vice versa, or whatever. What are they going to say? You know what I mean? And to me, that left me with the question that I'm asking you is, what do you want your legacy to be as a dad? What do you want them saying about you?
You know what? I mean, to be completely honest with you,
Mm-hmm.
um, I want them to know that I never gave up on them. I
Yes.
I if when they think back and think about me as far back as they can remember, they're going to know that I've always been there.
Mm-hmm.
No matter what we had going on with the divorce and the separation, and how hard it was made for me, you
Mm-hmm.
know, that it never mattered. I was always there for their games. I never missed my days with them. I just didn't quit. You know, I didn't
Mm-hmm.
quit, and I was always there. That's one thing that I want them to know and remember about me.
Mm-hmm. No, for sure. And it's crazy that you said that because other yes, that I had, they talk about having a hard dad and stuff like that. But the one thing that was constant, what they said, is that they knew that their dad was there for them, no matter what.
Yeah, I
And
think
that's
that's
important.
that means the most to me, man. I mean, yeah, I might not be perfect and I make mistakes,
Mm-hmm.
but dad was always there. Dad was always there. He was never not there.
Mm.
That's that means the most to me.
Mm. Man, that's beautiful, brother. No, definitely. I love that. And that's one of the reasons why we ask guests like you and other linemen to come on, brothers, because we know none of us are perfect, right? And to see you and your interaction with your beautiful daughters, dude, that just brings me joy in my own heart because you're freaking doing it, dude. You know what I mean? You're being present, right?
Yeah, thanks, man. Thank you.
And to me, I think that speaks more and that's more volumes than some guy, you know, doing all these things on to get likes on TikTok or whatever the heck. You know what I'm saying? You're there, you're being present, you're being a dad. And that's what it's about. Doesn't have to be like this spectacular, crazy stuff or whatever, you know what I mean? But man, just being present and just really seeing the joy on your daughter's faces, seeing the joy in you. That's what it's about. That's priceless. You can't buy that. No amount of money, you know?
No, you can't, and you can't never get that time back if you missed
Mm-hmm.
it. That's and it kills me because you know their mother they moved about 40 miles away, and that traffic that way it's like double.
Mm-hmm.
And, I can't be there every day. I can't see them at least every other day. I can't help
Mm-hmm.
with their homework all the time. So the time I have, we might not be at Disneyland every weekend or doing these spectacular things, but we're together,
Mm-hmm.
we we're always together.
And I think that's what men, especially guys in our trade, need to understand that, hey, we're not telling you guys not to work. We understand that you can't be there every single minute. But like you, Johnny, when you're there, be present, right? Be where your feet are and just enjoy that time, brother, because it goes quick. I had a guest tell me that all we have is really 14 summers with our children. Because once they get to 14, they don't even want to really be around you unless you are in a good relationship with them. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I'm dreading that. I really am because I've heard that
Mm-hmm.
before.
It's crazy, huh? And
Yeah, absolutely.
now this trade, right? We talked about it and a little, you know what I mean, about line work and stuff like that, a little bit about that. It can be hard on a family. And it has the ability to magnify problems that we didn't even know that existed, right?
Yeah.
What is one thing you would like to see change in the trade when it comes to our families? You know, what do you
Well,
think?
I mean, the most important thing to me
Mm-hmm.
would be time.
Time.
Just a little bit of time. I mean, I knew this lineman. I think he retired. 30 plus years.
Mm-hmm.
And we're just chit chatting. He was retiring, and you know, I'm kind of a young journeyman, and he's like, "Hey, man," he goes, "The only thing I regret um, doing was working so much and being away from my kids." He goes, "I
Mm-hmm.
was always at work. I missed all their games. I missed all the little functions." He goes, "I was never there because I was always providing."
Mm-hmm.
And that always kind of stuck with me.
Mm-hmm.
And he was just one of those guys that was a go-getter. And it'd be his kid's birthday party. He'd get a call out, and hey, see you guys later. I'm going to work. And he told me that's the one thing he regrets. And so having some kind of time, I
Mm-hmm.
think, is the most important thing. And in line work, like we talked about, man, it's going to happen with or without you.
Yeah.
It's either you got to work, or I mean, you ain't working here.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, that'd be a nice change. And it
Mm-hmm.
don't take a whole lot.
No, it doesn't. And when you're at work, take care of business and have priorities, right? I think it's about a lot about priorities and being able to set down boundaries. I mean, I know a lot of guys who had a hard time saying no. They would get shamed into work, even though they didn't want to be at work. They had plans, but for some odd reason, they felt obligated to the
Mm.
company or to their crew or whatever to be there. And then they're complaining the whole entire time they were there at work. They'd be bitching. And I'm like, well, why the hell did you stay? Why'd you take the call out then? If you didn't want to be here, I don't want that negativity around. I don't even really want to be here, but I'm here. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
it's one of those things, and I think it falls down to setting those boundaries and being, hey, dude, not this weekend, brother. I got mine. Last weekend I did it. Now let one of these young bucks come in here and take some
Yeah.
overtime, right?
No, absolutely. But I mean, what he told me, man, I mean, that always stuck with me.
Yeah.
So, and he was right.
Mm-hmm.
And that could pertain to anything, not just work. But
Yep.
in this case, it's line work, it's work. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I'd say that's the biggest thing, man.
No, and you're right, man. It can't pertain to anything because I know guys, man, they get off of work and the first thing they do is they go golfing, right?
Yeah.
And or whatever hobby they have, and it's like, okay, man, and now you're complaining that your wife's upset because you're not spending time with the family, right? And then now you're wanting me to cover for you. I'm not gonna do that. Don't make me lie for you. You know what I mean? I'm not gonna do that. And it's like it's crazy, and it falls back to priorities. Are you gonna
Yeah.
prioritize your family? What rank does your family fall in? Right?
Yeah. Yeah, like the last year and a half, my girl started playing softball.
Mm-hmm.
So, they'd have maybe one or two games during the week. They'd have one on a Saturday. And, it's summertime. So, buddy hit me up, hey, let's go to the river, Oh,
Mm-hmm.
when you want to go? It's on this Saturday. So I look at their schedule. They got a game Saturday, and
Mm-hmm.
I just can't, even though it's not my weekend to have them, I can't miss those games. Like
Mm-hmm.
you said, I mean, there's just priorities, man.
Man, that's good. That's good that you're putting your family first, Johnny. Um, what is one bit of advice you can give to the next generation pertaining to line work, pertaining to family, whatever piece of advice you can give right now to our audience before we sign off, brother? What would it be?
Well, consistency,
Consistency.
whether it's in line work or whether it's with your kids or your family.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you got to be consistent with them, with your job or with your
Mm-hmm.
family. I mean, if you're consistent, it'll get you somewhere. It'll show somewhere, you
Mm-hmm.
know. At least that's how I feel. I mean, like we said, man, you can't give up,
Mm-hmm.
consistency.
Yeah, I love that, man. No, I agree with you 100%, Johnny. Um, if someone wanted to get a hold of you, brother, on Instagram or something like that, can you share with our audience if they had questions for you or anything like that? Do you mind doing that or?
Yeah, I'm SoCal Lineman on
Mm-hmm.
Instagram. It's like three underscores, SoCal underscore Lineman, three more underscores. I'm
Mm-hmm.
always on there. A lot of young guys reach out to me about getting in the trade, or
Mm-hmm.
I got a lot of friends on there. Someone has questions. Usually
Mm-hmm.
it's about line work. I mean, I do my best. They're trying to get in the trade or whatever it is. Like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, I always answer.
Yeah, heck yeah, definitely. Thank you for sharing that with us, Johnny. And thank you for being a leader. Seriously, dude, because that's what you are. You're being a leader in this industry. I get questions all the time from some major people in this industry, and they're always like, how do we change the culture? And it starts with guys like you, just that momentum. Let's keep it going, brother. So thank you once again from the Show Up Dad, bro. Thank you for coming on and sharing your wisdom. Thank you for being open, dude. Seriously. And just thank you for being our guest, dude. We really appreciate it.
Thanks, bro. Hey, I appreciate it, man. I love what you're doing. And I'm listening. I know a lot of people out there are,
Mm-hmm.
and just thanks for having me.
Absolutely, brother. Well, we'll be talking to you soon, Johnny. Thank